By the time Queen Elizabeth I died in 1603, she had ruled for nearly 45 years. She was England's Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, a living symbol of power and pride. But behind the carefully crafted image of youth and majesty was an aging monarch who was slowly falling apart, physically, emotionally, and politically. Elizabeth died at the age of 69 on the 24th of March, and the end was drawn out, uncomfortable, and, according to some who witnessed it, deeply unsettling. This is the story of her final weeks, of melancholy, makeup, and a monarch desperate to keep up appearances, even as everything was slipping away. It might seem a little bit dark to focus on Elizabeth's final days, but the way that she faced death tells us just as much about her reign as her victories did. The mask of youth, the silence on succession, the fear of being seen as weak. This was all part of how she ruled, right up until the end. So grab your coffee or your water, and let's settle in and talk about the final days of Elizabeth I. Hello, friend, and welcome back to the YouTube channel for the Renaissance English History Podcast. I am your host, Heather. I've been podcasting about Tudor England since 2009 with my show, which makes it the original Tudor History Podcast. This channel is where I put all of my episodes from all of my shows, as well as tons of extra content like this video right here. Today, of course, we are talking about the final days and death of Gloriana Elizabeth I. Let's get right into it. Elizabeth's decline began quietly, at least outwardly. In the winter of 1602, Elizabeth was still hosting court at Whitehall, but her energy was flagging. She suffered from a severe sore throat, and she could barely speak above a whisper. She sipped soothing drinks constantly, but she didn't eat very much. Visitors were turned away, confused, after being told that they had no appointment, despite the fact that Elizabeth herself had summoned them. She was becoming forgetful, withdrawn, and increasingly melancholy. The death of her beloved lady-in-waiting Catherine Howard, no, not the fifth wife, but another one, hit her hard. Even worse was the lingering grief over Robert Devereux, the Earl of Essex. His execution the previous year, which was ordered by Elizabeth herself, it was sticking with her. It was a little bit haunting her. At the mention of his name, she was said to weep and beat her chest with her fist. She had, of course, always been vain, famously so, but in these final months, her looks became a fixation. She insisted on full court regalia, even when she was physically unable to carry it off. A visiting Venetian ambassador noted that Elizabeth was absolutely covered in pearls. Her once slender fingers were now swollen, and her coronation ring, which she had worn for 45 years, had to be cut off when it became embedded in her flesh. A symbolic marriage to her kingdom removed just days before her death. People took that as a very bad omen. But she wasn't going to let go of her image. She piled on makeup, lead-based Venetian ceruse thick as plaster, to preserve what she called her mask of youth. It's said that at the time of her death, she had a full inch of makeup on her face. That's a lot. In February 1603, Elizabeth moved to Richmond Palace. It was a place with deep Tudor history. Her grandfather, Henry VII, had died there nearly a century before. Now his granddaughter had come to do the same. At first, there were moments of clarity. She reportedly scolded a Venetian ambassador who dared to raise the issue of piracy, lashing out that the Republic of Venice only ever asks for something. But those moments were fleeting. By early March, her behavior had become erratic and worrying. She barely ate, her mouth and throat were painfully dry, and her body was failing her. She refused to lie down, fearing, perhaps rightly, that if she did, she would never rise again. So she stood for hours. And then she collapsed onto the floor where her ladies-in-waiting had piled cushions. She remained there, silent, unmoving, for days. On March 19th, her cousin Robert Carey visited. She took his hand and whispered, "Robin, I'm not well." And that was one of the last things that she would ever say. By March 23rd, Elizabeth was fading fast. She hadn't moved from her pile of cushions in days. Her eyes were fixed on the floor. Her finger stayed pressed to her mouth. She wouldn't speak, she wouldn't eat, and she wouldn't sleep. The Privy Council gathered at Richmond. They needed her to name a successor. Legally, the will of Henry VIII still stood, but it barred James VI of Scotland from inheriting the English throne. The only way around it was if Elizabeth gave a sign of her wishes, but she couldn't speak. So they asked her to raise her finger or gesture in response to James's name. Some witnesses later claimed that she lifted her hand to her head in the shape of a crown. Others insisted that she didn't move at all. Either way, the council left that room with their answer. They said Elizabeth had signaled James VI of Scotland was to be king. It was her final act of state. Later that night, the Archbishop of Canterbury and Elizabeth's chaplains came to pray with her, and in the early hours of the 24th of March, 1603, Queen Elizabeth died quietly in her bed at Richmond Palace. The sun had set on the Tudor dynasty. Even in death, Elizabeth's body was guarded, literally and symbolically. Her Lady of the Bedchamber refused permission for post-mortem, likely to protect the Queen's image as the untouched Virgin Queen. But reports began to leak that her coronation ring had grown into her flesh, that her face was so thick with lead-based paint that it cracked under the embalmer's touch, that her body, sealed in a lead-lined coffin, burst open from the buildup of gases during decomposition. Her hair had mostly fallen out, her teeth were decaying and infected with dental abscesses causing terrible pain and swelling in her throat. Some said the glands in her neck burst just before she died. Modern pathologists believe that she ultimately died of bronchial pneumonia, possibly complicated by heart failure and sepsis, exacerbated by chronic lead poisoning from decades of the Venetian Cerise makeup that she was using. The mask of youth had ultimately done its damage. She had held on to her image until the very end, but it couldn't hold her together, not anymore. Elizabeth's body was embalmed and lay in state at Richmond for several days, watched over by 6 of her ladies. Then it was taken by barge along the Thames to Whitehall under velvet and candles. According to one observer, the oars at every stroke did tears let fall. On April 28th, over a month after her death, the funeral procession made its way through the streets of London. Thousands lined the route. The coffin was topped with a striking effigy of the Queen in full royal robes, so lifelike that it reportedly made the crowd gasp. Her body was first interred at the vault of her grandfather, Henry VII, at Westminster Abbey. But in 1606, King James I ordered her coffin moved to a new tomb, and she now has a shared resting place with her half-sister, Mary I. The Latin inscription at the base reads, "Partners in throne and grave, here we sleep, Elizabeth and Mary, sisters in the hope of resurrection." Elizabeth's final weeks were marked by pain, paranoia, and exhaustion. But even as her body failed, she tried to hold on to the power and the image that she had so carefully built up over 4 decades. She refused to name the successor until the very, very end. She refused to lie down. She refused to give up her mask of youth. She had ruled alone, and she would ultimately go out alone. And with her last breath, the Tudor era folded. No wars, no rebellion, just silence as England turned the page very quietly. So look, I know this isn't the cheeriest topic, and I get that, but the end of Elizabeth's life was pure Tudor drama. Power, vanity, secrecy, betrayal, symbolism everywhere. So we will leave it there for now. If you made it this far in the video and you enjoyed it, I sure would appreciate a press of that like button. It helps to feed the algorithm and get our content to even more people, but you know. I hope I earned your subscription to my channel if I don't already have it, where I put out content like this on the regular. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to keep watching Elizabeth I content, here is a podcast episode I did on her ladies in waiting that you might like, or here's a video that YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. Thank you so much for being here. Remember, you are deeply loved. I'm so glad I share the planet with you. You make the planet a better place. I will be back very soon. In the meantime, don't forget to drink your water, friend. Bye-bye.